Hello, this is the Finding Sources video for Comp 2. In this video, I'm going to talk some more about the research process in terms of planning a research project. Then I'm going to go into finding the finding evidence readings, the MLA readings, and also look at Reading Journal 4. So next I want you guys to start thinking about planning. Now this takes us back to Comp 1, in which we learned how to start getting ideas for essays. And that's why I call the next assignment the E2 plan page, because this is where you're getting ideas, right? So we have to think about the various ways that we can brainstorm and what's most effective for us. So we want to make sure that we have a schedule that actually allows us time to complete all the steps in a timely way. So of course we don't want to use this creative process in which we wait until the night before and then, are very upset, and of course our work's not going to be that great. I make sure you guys turn in certain assignments that don't really allow you to do that. But even if we think about, the smaller deadlines, we still don't want to put those off. So there are actually sort of three parts to what we're going to be doing with this specific essay, but also thinking ahead to future research essays. So, right now we're in the middle of the planning, so choosing topic stage, right? And you guys have your topics due Sunday. So some things to think about and some things I asked you to think about in the plan page assignment is, what topics speak to us, what is interesting to us, what are some things we already know about. Especially with our majors, obviously usually we choose majors that we're interested in. So, what's some stuff going on there in those classes that you're taking? And then again, the research question towards the end will help us figure out what kind of search terms we're going to use in order to get the best results in our research. Further on in this video, I'm going to talk about figuring out our purpose and audience, how to develop a list of source, and actually start taking the first steps of finding evidence. Of course, after this stage is when you're going to start working on putting your paper together. So just kind of a review of the whole process, although we are really only in stages, maybe 1 through 4 right now. I'm not requiring an outline be turned in for Essay 2, but I definitely suggest it as one of the ways to plan. Even with this paper, or especially with this paper, because we are mapping out something for our readers, so it's really important that we are very knowledgeable of the map ourselves, so an outline can kind of be our own map. So just really quick, I wanted to do a little bit of model planning, so walking through the steps of trying to find a topic for an essay. This is one of those things that I would spend a lot of time doing in class, but of course, this semester we can't be in class as much. So I thought walking through it, just on my screen might be helpful to people who are struggling with figuring out what their topic's going to be. So I'm back here in the week 5 after class materials folder, and I'm looking at the plan page. Because to be honest, I try to put all my suggestions here in this assignment in terms of finding a topic. So I thought I would just actually model some of those. So the first one is to spend some time browsing the chapters, the end chapters of Everything's an Argument. So if we look in the table of contents, we see that the part 5 has chapters on pop culture and stereotypes. How does what we eat define us? How does language influence our world? Has the internet destroyed privacy? And how free should campus speech be? And that first one really, caught my attention. So I'm going to model going through that chapter and thinking about, maybe some topics that I could write a paper on. So the first one in that chapter is about Moana and how the depiction of indigenous people in that movie. And, when I first read that, I start thinking about, Disney is sort of has a bad history of, their depictions of people, and I'm obviously trying to get better. I think it was starting with like Mulan. So that's actually something that's really interesting to me. So I could maybe pursue something in that in terms of, depiction and of stereotypes in media, right, or movies. The next article in that chapter is called Shooting Guns. It's rather fun, actually, which I think is a pretty provocative title, right? And of course, it's getting to this idea of a very hot topic in our country today is, the Second Amendment. And so this one is, the title tells us it's on the side of being able to have guns. And as I scan it, it does seem to be pretty reasonable, in terms of in the conclusion saying keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally ill is not incompatible with widespread gun ownership. So, again, thinking about, what are some of those issues that we wanted that we are concerned about when it comes to using guns. So that might, add to some search terms I could explore. The next article is called How a Bible Belt and Evangelical Church Embraced Gay Rights. So again, this idea of, generally super religious or super Christian people are stereotypically against gay rights, right? So that's kind of giving us an outlook that is different than what we expected. So again, the stereotypes chapter I think is really interesting because it can help us see like what are those, I don't want to say wrong views, but what are some views on the topic, and then we sort of can look for the other views on on the same topic. The next reading is called Redskins, Insult, and Brand. It's from a book. I do know a little bit, just about the idea of the Redskins and how some people want to change the name of that team. So, that's definitely, the idea of the mascots being offensive is definitely something that is a pretty current controversy. I know at one point the owner had said he'll never, like over his dead body, change it or something kind of like that. So that might be, a really fruitful controversy or something similar to it in terms of like there's a lot of points of view on it. The next reading in that chapter is called Playing with Prejudice, the Prevalence and Consequences of Racial Stereotypes in Video Games. Ooh, that's a mouthful, and that is a very scientific article. And I have read this one very carefully, and it's basically about how, like it sounds, racial stereotypes are perpetuated in games in terms of violence against women, and their depictions of, like, the bad guys, basically, are usually colored. So, and it, has statistics on that. It's a very well-researched article. The next thing in this chapter is a visual argument. It looks like some cereal boxes, or it's supposed to look like cereal boxes, but it's a commentary on like indigenous people and their lands in British Columbia, so up in Canada. So kind of maybe similar to here in America, but this idea that their lands were taken away. And then I think this is, the last reading in this chapter is called Covering the Transgender Community, How Newsrooms Are Moving Beyond the Coming Out Story to Report Crucial Transgender Issues. So, of course, then, with transgender issues, I start thinking about, like the bathrooms, the pronouns. So, like, what are some of the things that we're, discussing these days? And so a lot of terms, coming out to me, even just going through, that one chapter. The editorials in Blackboard were another, sort of related to the chapters, and everything's an argument in terms of some themes that might jump out in a similar way. In terms of the core values way of coming up with ideas, something I thought about as I was looking over this, in terms of one of my core values, is creativity. So that's, being creative is super important to me, or the ability to express creativity. And so there's a lot that can come in with that. I have a child in the school system where money to the arts and even sports and things like that are being cut, so that would be something I could explore. So, with the core values list, what I'm really asking you to do is think about like what matters to you, in the world around us. So, this mapping a controversy doesn't just have to be an academic exercise. It can be a way for you to explore things you care about and really get to, try to find out all the facts about it. Again, coming back to try to choose a topic that you haven't already made up your mind about. And then the CQ researcher, that fourth way of, coming up with some ideas, I put a link there. If you click on it and it asks you to log into your UCM account, it should if you close out that window and then click on it again, it should work, as long as because if you're logged into Blackboard, it's the same login for the library, which is of course how we get the access to CQ Researcher. So I think this one's pretty straightforward in terms of, some ways to explore it, or avenues to explore in terms of topics. So, current events would be, fruitful for looking for topics. But then, of course, they're grouped, in larger. So, obviously I would be interested in education. You might be too as a student. So just, keep drilling down and thinking about, oh yeah, I kind of do care about college costs. As a teacher, it affects me in terms of job security. Of course, you guys as current students, it affects you directly. But I'm also thinking back to, college debt, this idea that, I have some college debt, quite a bit. And, maybe there's some, that's definitely something that a lot of people have different points of view on in terms of what we should do about that. So I've got a lot of ideas percolating. I threw out a lot of, terms and issues just now. So let's turn to thinking about now, what am I going to do with that? Um, so in terms of the plan page assignment, I would probably, just me personally, start typing out ideas. I really am interested in education, so looking into, the idea of like tuition. What do people say about what we should do about college tuition? I would probably pick the other one. This actually goes back to the list of editorials, and I didn't put anything on there about electoral college, but did put some issues with voting, and that's something that I'm really interested in and I would like to find out, more about. And again, something that a lot of people have different viewpoints on. So I'm going to stop this video right here and create a part 2 before I run out of time. I'm only allowed to record 15 minutes at once. So I'm going to stop here and pick up in part 2 with finding evidence.